Divine Oracle, Unwritten Words Behind My Novel. The historical blueprint of a great Argead saga, Alexein. Volume 1, Deadliest, The War Dance. By Macedonian. Audio essay. Episode 7, Philip II of Macedon, Forging the Iron Core. Welcome back to Divine Oracle, Unwritten Words Behind My Novel. I am Macedonian. King Philip II of Macedon, the sovereign who single-handedly systematically re-engineered a bankrupt, fractured northern territory into the most dominant geopolitical force in the ancient Mediterranean, remains an object of permanent historical fascination. His life functions as a complex tapestry woven with threads of staggering military innovation, unyielding ambition, and calculating diplomatic strategy. It provides a masterclass in leadership evolution, illustrating how early traumatic vulnerability can harden an individual into an absolute master of statecraft. In modern cinema, television, and pop culture documentaries, the father of Alexander the Great is routinely flattened into a one-dimensional caricature. He's frequently depicted as a crude, brutal, and bloodthirsty barbarian king, whose reign was driven entirely by unbridled pride and animalistic ambition and a toxic, simmering jealousy of his own son. While these dramatic portrayals effectively capture his terrifying martial presence, they fail completely to address the true intellectual reality of the man. Was Philip merely a savage warlord who happened to inherit a crown, or was he a deeply educated, sophisticated grand strategist who mastered the fine arts of southern Greek diplomacy and revolutionary military geometry? To accurately comprehend the spectacular global triumphs of Alexander the Great, to truly dissect the why and the how of the imperial conquest, we must first cast aside the modern mythology and dive deeply into the crucible of his father's era. The royal nomenclature, lineage, and intent. The designation of the name Philippos to the youngest son of King Amyntas III was no casual or random parental occurrence. When analyzed through the specific lens of ancient naming customs, the ancestral traditions of the Argead dynasty, and the widespread cultural weight of prophecy, it becomes indisputably clear that his name was selected with precise geopolitical intent and symbolic gravity, calculated to shape the young prince's social standing and cosmic trajectory from the exact moment of his birth. 1. The heritage of the Argead dynasty. To understand the underlying weight of his name, we must examine the internal architecture of Macedonian royal traditions. The ruling house of Pella, the Argeads, explicitly traced their sovereign lineage back through a mythic founder originating from Argos, claiming direct descent from the demigod Heracles. The royal family aggressively cultivated this heroic lineage to legitimize their autocratic power over the hyper-factionalized Macedonian barons and to secure their status as authentic Greeks to the wider Mediterranean world. Names within the Argead house were never selected for aesthetic novelty. They were highly conservative cyclical titles engineered to forge an unbreakable physical and spiritual link between the current generation and the legendary military predecessors who built the state. 2. The influence of prophetic ideology. While surviving records do not preserve a specific written textual oracle predicting Philip's exact birth, we must never underestimate the absolute authority of prophecy within 4th century BCE life. The Macedonian court routinely dispatched emissaries to consult foreign seers and localized diviners to seek divine guidance on critical matters of state, particularly concerning the health, naming, and military potential of royal heirs. In this warrior environment, a name functioned as a living omen. It reflected the distinct localized spiritual hopes of the palace and served to project an immediate aura of destiny that would command the respect of the lowland aristocracy. 3. The structural meaning of Philippos derived from the classical Greek compound. Philippos translates directly as lover of horses or friend of horses. In the context of ancient Macedonian material culture, this title carried 3 profound, elite meanings. Martial preeminence. In the ancient world, horses were the ultimate engines of advanced warfare. The name Philippos carried an immediate, explicit promise of supreme equestrian mastery and frontline military capability, marking the young prince out as a future commander of the elite aristocratic shock units. Sovereign aristocracy, the breeding, maintenance, and deployment of fine horses required extraordinary wealth and vast territory. Throughout the Greek world, horses were the exclusive symbols of high-blooded nobility, making the name a constant public assertion of the young prince's absolute royal status. Divine alignment. Horses were deeply woven into ancient religious iconography, frequently serving as sacred symbols of divine authority, martial triumph, and the hidden forces of the underworld. The title subtly infused the young Argead prince with an aura of sacred protection. Ultimately, the name given to Amyntas III's youngest son was a calculated ideological blueprint. It functioned as an explicit declaration of military excellence, supreme royal lineage, and divine destiny, shaping his early psychological development and setting the stage for a king who would permanently rewrite the balance of power across the known world. A psychological portrait of the architect peeling back the layers of ancient slander to reconstruct a plausible psychological profile of Philip II requires analyzing his concrete actions, battlefield mechanics, and diplomatic maneuvers against the hostile bias of our surviving sources. What emerges is not the portrait of an impulsive barbarian, but a fascinating, deeply complex matrix of ruthless strategic masterclass, high ego, and cold, calculating pragmatism. 1. Ruthless strategic mastery. A relentless, compromise-free pursuit of absolute hegemony defined Philip's adult career. His military operations were consistently swift, definitive, and unapologetically brutal. He possessed an unyielding willingness to engage in maximum physical violence, utilizing calculated cruelty to completely annihilate his strategic opposition. This behavior highlights a psychology that placed an absolute premium on total dominance and control, indicating a highly compartmentalized personality capable of executing horrific acts of violence without allowing empathy to interfere with state objectives. Yet, this ruthlessness was married to a spectacular, near-supernatural intellect for human psychology. Philip was a master of subversion, blackmail, and political manipulation. He possessed an extraordinarily sharp understanding of human greed and vulnerability, famously remarking that no city wall was too high if an ass laden with gold could be driven through its gates. He could read a political landscape instantly, planning moves decades in advance and demonstrating a high tolerance for operational friction. 2. Ambition and the pursuit of glory. An unquenchable, insatiable ambition drove Philip's entire existence. His lifelong campaign to forcibly unify the fractured Greek city-states under absolute Macedonian hegemony was never a mere defensive political policy. It was a deeply personal, obsessive vision driven by an immense ego and a profound desire to carve his name permanently into the bedrock of human history. This hyper-ambitious drive may well have originated from a deep-seated provincial insecurity, a psychological need to violently prove his own strategic superiority to the arrogant, intellectual elites of southern Greece who looked down upon his homeland. His boundless physical energy, his total willingness to suffer severe bodily mutilation on the front lines, losing an eye, shattering a collarbone, and being crippled in the leg, and his ability to command from the very front of the vanguard demonstrate a personality that thrived under extreme stress, pressure, and existential risk. 3. Pragmatism and calculated risk. Despite his towering ambition, Philip's decisions were never dictated by blind emotion or unbridled hubris. He was an absolute pragmatist evaluating complex military situations with a detached, clinical logic. He adjusted his strategic maneuvers seamlessly to changing variables, meticulously weighing the mathematical risks of any campaign before deploying his forces. He understood precisely when raw military violence was required, and when soft, insidious diplomacy was the superior weapon. His high-stakes gambles, such as his brilliant calculated intervention in the Third Sacred War, showcase a profound self-confidence matched with a cold understanding of long-term geopolitical consequences. He was a master of combining rational planning with sudden, terrifyingly bold execution. The Theban Captivity, the Prince's Apprenticeship. The supreme military machine that Philip later unleashed upon the world was not conceived in a vacuum. The iron foundations of his intellect were forged during his youth, not on the battlefields of the north, but behind the gilded bars of a high-stakes political captivity in the south. Following the strategic interventions of the Theban general Pelopidas in Macedonia in 368 BCE, the teenage Prince Philip was dragged down the long road to Thebes as a premier political hostage to guarantee the good behavior of the Pella Regency. Lasting from roughly 368 to 365-364 BCE, this formative period was a masterclass in survival and observation. Thebes at this exact coordinate in history was not a passive environment. It was the absolute military and intellectual superpower of Greece, fresh from completely smashing Spartan land dominance at the Battle of Leuctra. For a brilliant, hyper-observant 14-year-old Macedonian prince, this captivity functioned as the ultimate political and martial university. Philip was strategically placed inside the elite household of Pamines, a highly celebrated Theban general and a deeply trusted confidant of the military revolutionary Epaminondas. This placement was of monumental historical consequence. Inside this household, Philip lived at the absolute epicenter of the Theban military revolution. He spent 3 to 4 uninterrupted years observing the rigorous discipline, advanced physics, and tactical mechanics of the Theban army. He stood on the training fields and watched the elite maneuvers of the Sacred Band. The famous shock unit comprised of 150 pairs of deeply devoted male lovers, whose absolute emotional integration produced an unbreakable, undefeated frontline solidarity. Philip meticulously studied Epaminondas's groundbreaking tactical innovations, specifically the concept of the asymmetrical dip-column slanting phalanx that massed overwhelming infantry power on a single flank to crush the enemy line at its strongest point. He absorbed their sophisticated methods of integrating multiple troop types, learning how to seamlessly coordinate heavy cavalry, light peltists, and shock infantry into a single, fluidly moving war apparatus. Beyond the raw mechanics of the drilling fields, Philip received an unyielding education in the dark art of aggressive Greek diplomacy. He watched how Thebes managed a volatile confederation through a brilliant combination of soft persuasion, strategic marriage alliances, political hostage-taking, and calculated coercion. He witnessed firsthand the fatal internal vulnerabilities of Greek democratic factionalism, lessons he would later weaponize with terrifying precision against them. By the time he managed to navigate his return to Macedonia in 365–364 BCE, Philip was no longer a provincial, isolated prince. He was an exceptionally dangerous intellectual weapon. He had successfully transformed his gilded cage into a supreme tactical laboratory, emerging as a leader who could effortlessly fuse the advanced, deep-column military science of the South with the raw, autocratic efficiency of his northern ancestors. The absolute blueprint of the global Macedonian Empire was drawn entirely in the dirt of his Theban mess tables. In Alexein, we bring that apprenticeship out of the shadows. We map the psychological genesis of the king, charting every scar, every calculated thought, and every breath of the man who built the machine that conquered the world. Tune in for our next daily drop tomorrow as we continue to dissect the bloodlines of antiquity. Alexein, a great Argead saga. Volume 1. Deadliest, the war dance. Unearth the ultimate historical drama. We are releasing a brand new episode every single day until the epic conclusion of Volume 1. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused, 5 to 15-minute hit of cinematic historical drama, the perfect daily plunge into the ancient world. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full saga now. Bookmark Volume 1, Deadliest playlist. Subscribe to follow the rise of the Argead dynasty. Thumbs up to help push our vanguard through the algorithm's gauntlet. Comment below. Was Philip II's radical military re-engineering born purely out of a desperate need for northern survival, or did he plan the total destruction of Greek independence from the very first day he returned from his Theban exile? Let me know your analysis in the comments below.